News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Northern Steel Buildings. Today's report of Utah Department of Health COVID statistics includes 3,179 new coronavirus infections from the weekend. That includes the deaths of 3 northern Utah residents. Among 29 statewide COVID deaths are 2 women from Box Elder County, one between 65 and 84 years, and the other between 25 and 44 years of age. Also a Cache County man over 85 years of age. Today's report includes 1,615 new cases from Friday, 637 Saturday, and 973 on Sunday from UDOH. Today's report includes 179 new cases in Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties over the weekend. There have been 553,061 positive cases in Utah since the start of the pandemic. And during the almost 20 months of the pandemic, 3,237 Utahns have lost their lives to the virus. That includes 160 in northern Utah. KBNU News Time is 4:06. KBNU weather for tonight. Slight chance of rain this evening, then rain after midnight, mostly cloudy, low around 40, and then rain likely Tuesday morning. A chance of rain in the afternoon tomorrow, high temperature in the lower 50s. Becoming partly cloudy Tuesday night, and then partly cloudy, then clearing on Wednesday. Wednesday's high in the mid-50s. Earlier today it was 59. It's down to 50, and we've picked up 1/100th of an inch of rain since this morning here at KBNU. Weather is brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. Before you put your sleeping bags away, give them a good wash in Mount Logan Laundry's 55 and 80-pound washers in Logan and Brigham. Don't pay for the expense of dry cleaning when you can clean your items at Mount Logan Laundry for much less. Located in Logan and Brigham City.
Okay, Piggy, this time that steel building is coming down.
What you got there, Wolfie?
It's a tornado in a tube. How can that be? Your building's still standing. I'm blown away.
A building from Northern Steel Buildings will keep out the big bad wolf, and they don't break the piggy bank. Visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
KBNU News Time is 4:08. A 13-year-old Utah boy died today after being struck by a car while trick-or-treating. Fox 13 reports that Carl Finch was with his younger brother and friends when he was hit while using a crosswalk in Taylorsville on Saturday. Finch was flown to Primary Children's Hospital, where he died early today. Another teenager was critically injured and hospitalized, but is expected to recover. 4 boys were crossing the street when they were hit by a sedan. Police are investigating why the car that struck the 2 boys failed to stop. Taylorsville Police Chief Brady Cottom says it was a tragic accident. And the Navajo Nation on Sunday reported 67 more COVID-19 cases and 2 additional deaths. The latest numbers pushed the tribe's totals to 36,817 confirmed cases from the virus since the pandemic began more than a year ago. The known death toll now is at 1,487. The Navajo Department of Health had reported 105 more COVID-19 cases on Friday, but no deaths for the 20th time in the past 30 days, and then 77 cases and 1 death on Saturday. Based on cases from October 8th through the 21st, the Tribal Health Department issued an advisory notice for 48 communities due to uncontrolled spread of COVID-19. The tribe's reservation is the country's largest at 27,000 square miles and covers parts of Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. KBNU News Time is 4:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Breaking news, stimulating talk. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
This election, vote Keegan for Logan. With support from county and state leaders, Keegan Garrity understands the importance of working together while considering all perspectives. Keegan believes that by following smart growth principles, we can keep the city downtown while preserving the open spaces we love. Keegan is willing to engage with anybody, including those with opposing viewpoints. He's the type of guy you could share a Diet Coke with. Vote Keegan, a voice for the people. Paid for by the committee to elect Keegan Garrity.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. Besides the governor's race in Virginia, a look at several other closely watched elections around the country that could provide a preview of the nation's mood ahead of next year's midterms. Also, in today's car market, there are bidding wars on used minivans and surprising benefits of eating leftover pumpkins. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
He won't come. He's too busy.
Jenny, of course he'll come.
Happy birthday!
Dad!
I know. You guys didn't think I'd make it, but come on. Could I really miss my son's birthday? Here you go, Dan.
Thanks, Dad. But today's Jenny's birthday.
Give me that. Happy birthday, Jenny!
Need to get closer to your family?
Nice football, Dad.
Give your family everything. Give them your time. From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care would love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cash Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It's Monday, November 1st. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. And, of course, you're with us. Thank you. 753-5868. We haven't done this in a long time, but similar to letters to the editor, similar rules, too. You've at least got to put your name on it. But give us a call if you want to make a pitch for a preferred candidate, if you want to talk about Proposition 1 in Wellsville, if you want any of that, is fair game. It is the day before Election Day, which for the last decade plus here in Utah has meant it is postmark your ballot day. So you have up until close of business at the post office to drop that ballot off. There are some, I don't know where, but there are some ballot drop boxes, mail drop boxes at the post offices around the valley. Some of them have pickup times as late as 6:30, but again, I don't remember where they are, but I know they're out there. But either way, if you want your ballot to be mailed in, got to postmark it by, I would say 5 o'clock to be safe today, and get yourself there to the post office. But you also have the option to take it in person, drop it off at your respective city offices. They usually have drop boxes just inside the building or just outside. And you can drop the ballot off in person throughout the day tomorrow up until 8 p.m. So we'll have probably some election results to talk about on Wednesday's show. You probably see those in the evening, actually, on CashValleyDaily.com and during the news breaks here. I don't know. I don't have any sense that any of these are going to be very close in some of the more high-profile races. Someone asked me what I thought was going to happen with Proposition 1 in Providence, and I I'll be honest with you, I don't know. My very, very unscientific surveying, which has basically been talking to friends and relatives and other folks I know in Providence, business owners, is that Proposition 1 is likely going to succeed. That's the sense I get. At least that's the sense they have, that the supporters of that mixed-use development are more numerous than just quieter than the opposers. I don't know. The Proposition 1 has been, I think, the one election-related thing in this municipal cycle that's caught my attention the most, just because it has everything in it. It is a proposition that's about our growth, which is coming, period, unavoidable. It's a proposition that's about wrapping our heads around this, accepting reality and recognizing that things like mixed-use development, meaning you've got, single-family dwellings alongside maybe more dense structures like townhomes and things like that, at issue with Proposition 1. I still say that there is some dishonesty in all this. I've seen this more dense development as proposed, referred to as extreme high density. It is not that. We're talking 8 townhomes. But in the future here in Cache Valley, we might be talking about something you could accurately call extreme high density. So it's been interesting for me to watch this play out, because this is a debate that we're probably going to see again and again and again and again over the next few decades here in Cache Valley as things change. None of us like change, but townhomes, even apartment buildings, are going to be a more frequent thing in not just development, but things you just see around the valley, things that are maybe nearer to you than they've ever been before. And planning it is really going to be key. We've talked before about some of the spots along the Wasatch Front where you can see, literally see what a lack of planning looks like, where you have landlocked cities along the Wasatch Front that have no good in and out route because the planning has been so patchwork over the years. So there's no main thoroughfare into or out of town or through town. You find yourself, if you drive out there, sometimes trying to get to, a large business destination, a popular business destination, find yourself funneled through subdivisions to get there. That's normally something that you want to avoid in your city planning, and it's something that Cache Valley cities have the privilege of being able to plan. But we've got to do it. And, if we're constantly having the discussion only in the realm of let's just not do it at all, well, that's just not realistic. But having the conversation of where it should go, having a conversation, there's another interesting dynamic in the Proposition 1 debate in Providence, and that is, as was represented here on our show, when we had folks in who were opposed to Proposition 1, who want to stop this development, one of the concerns is the location of this development does mean that a burden may be placed on a neighboring city if this development is finished. And that's a legitimate question to raise. And so Proposition 1 also brings that into the mix. Should cities be coordinating with each other more? Should, a city be in discussions with another city? But should the county get more involved in this, which isn't traditionally the case when it comes to housing and development decisions? But should the county maybe be coordinating a bit more on those issues where development is going to impact traffic in a neighboring city more so than the city that the development will actually be located in? These are the types of things that are just going to be a more and more frequent part of our housing discussions. They're going to be something that comes up more frequently than we're used to here in Cache Valley. And so for me, that's been one of the most interesting things that will be on the ballot. I don't live in Providence. I won't get to vote on this one, but I'm very interested to see how this turns out. And for those not familiar, again, the Proposition 1 ballot choice for Providence voters is a little confusing. voting for. Normally, when you're voting for a proposition, you're usually trying to stop or change something. Voting for Proposition 1 is actually voting to not change the trajectory of this development specifically, but of the city and the city's embrace of what is called life cycle zoning, which means you can a development can meet multiple needs, I think is the goal of that. And it's Providence really, with that life cycle zoning, whether residents like it or not, it's Providence's sincere attempt to meet the coming need and to come up with solutions that a lot of cities are going to have to grapple with this in the same way. And it's also an unfunded state mandate. The legislature has told cities, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically in statute they've said you've got 5 years to get your act together. We have a housing shortage. We have a real problem with housing prices, and more needs to be built. But you've got to plan it. You can't just throw it wherever it can go right now. You've got to think about things like open space and business districts in their relation to housing districts. And you've got to wrap your heads around all this. And most cities, honestly, have had the luxury of operating like small towns here in Cache Valley, except for Logan, for a long time, for a lot longer than most other parts in the more crowded areas of the state. Obviously they're not having these debates down in Grand County or Garfield County, and some counties in the state, cities within those counties, may never end up having these debates. I don't know that there will ever be a time when Escalante, for example, is having a fight over where a few townhouses should go and how that might impact traffic. They can probably just put them wherever there's space, and there's still going to be plenty of open space and plenty of safe travel routes and at least somewhat high-speed thoroughfares in Escalante, Utah. Easy enough to do when the population's that small. That's not the case here. Hasn't been the case here actually for a long time. So again, this is the most interesting thing on the ballot for me to watch from the Valley at large. But if you're watching something, if there's a race that you're particularly interested in, if you want to make predictions, if you want to guess at what's going to happen in, say, the Logan City mayoral race, things like that, if you want to just talk about why you're going to be marking your ballot the way you're going to be marking it, similar to a letter to the editor in support or opposition of this or that, you're welcome to join us. 753-5868. Again, ballots need to be postmarked today. If they are not postmarked today, do not mail them. Drop them off in person at your city offices, or look on the website to see where their drop boxes are, and drop it off in person if you're not able to postmark your ballot today, if there are municipal elections happening in your city. And most cities here in the Valley have something at least on the ballot. So if you were registered expecting a ballot and did not get one or have lost one, also you don't want to be putting that off. Stop in to your local city office today if possible, early tomorrow if not possible today, and see what you need to do to be able to get a replacement ballot or a provisional ballot and still cast a vote. So, again, postmark your ballots by, I would say, 5 o'clock today to be safe. If you're not able to do that, your only option is going to be dropping them off in person. If you're not able to mail your ballot today, do not mail your ballot. 753-5868. More For the People, and a look at what the legislature has been up to today in this now almost 3-hour redistricting meeting taking place right after this.
NMLS 1817019.
Want the lowest mortgage rate? Don't go to a bank or credit union. LendRight Mortgage's rates are often at least 0.25% lower than other lenders. Listen to these Google reviews from very happy clients. Mary, I did my due diligence and compared 3 other companies, and none of them could compete with the rates offered by LendRight Mortgage. David, LendRight had the best rate we could find, and we shopped pretty heavily. Megan, they got me a great interest rate, much lower than competitors. Landon, from start to finish, they were great. Other companies couldn't touch their rates. Ron, on top of the superior service, I also got a 1.75% rate. Wow. This is why we confidently offer a $1,000 lowest rate guarantee. Rates in the ones will soon be gone. Call 801-APPROVE or visit lendrightmortgage.com.
Summer heat will soon turn to rain and snow. Is your roof prepared for another winter? RoofMax by Quality Pace Roofing is a nationally recognized and approved roof rejuvenation product, saving you thousands over shingle replacement. RoofMax is a quick and affordable alternative to a complicated and expensive roof replacement, extending your shingle roof up to 15 years beyond the roof warranty. RoofMax by Quality Pace Roofing can rejuvenate your roof without replacement. Google Quality Pace Roofing or call 757-9642.
Over 2.8 million Americans have served in our military since 9/11. Many have returned home with devastating injuries and few resources for them and their families. This is news correspondent Bob Woodruff. I sustained a life-threatening injury while reporting from Iraq in 2006. The military had my back that day, and they have each other's while serving. It's time we had theirs. Please join us as part of the Got Your Six initiative. To learn more, go to gotyour6.org using the number 6.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. I'm going to hold off a bit on this redistricting committee. Well, yeah. Okay, so what's happening on Capitol Hill right now? Short version, the redistricting, Independent Redistricting Commission, created by voters via ballot initiative, is pitching their maps, explaining their maps, answering questions of the legislative committee. So the commission talking to the committee. The committee gets final say, and they will make their own recommendation to the full legislature for a vote in a special redistricting session in the next couple of weeks. What's happening today is the independent voter-created commission has drawn 12 maps, and they are explaining them to lawmakers. It's gone on. It started at 2. It's still going, and it's really interesting. But I'm going to hold off a bit on that because they're actually discussing something right now that I want to be able to announce the results of as they discuss that. No final decision will be made today on any of this, but quite a look into what lawmakers are concerned about versus what voters are concerned about and how often the two don't align. Also, tomorrow on the show, related to this, former State Senator Lyle Hilliard, who is a member of this commission, the voter-created independent commission, former State Senator Lyle Hilliard will be our guest on the show tomorrow, and he's agreed to spend a full hour of tomorrow's show talking about what they learned throughout this process. Now, of course, he's been involved in this from the legislative side 3 times over, so this was a first for him to approach this as not a lawmaker, and it was, he said, a very unique experience. So he'll be with us tomorrow to talk about that, but we'll dig into what the committee's discussing in a bit, maybe on the other side of the news. Again, they're actually digging through some of the data right now. We want to be able to talk about where they land on that, so hopefully they wrap that conversation up soon. I wanted to talk about this a little bit. This is a flashback kind of thing, but it was put in my mind by actually a guest on the show. We had a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago, and this person emailed to thank us, said they had a great time, and talk about maybe coming back sometime next year to recap. And she sent this along, and she said, I thought you would appreciate this. And then she told a story that was, I think, touching. It's easy to lose sight of this type of thing. I don't know. For me, it is. I for those who have never hosted a radio show for this long, I tend to come in here every day. You know, Bill and I, we joke around the breaks and hang, discuss things just like coworkers at any job would. And there's preparation work. There's sometimes, internal things that go on where, a discussion happens over this or that, or planning for the future, or things like that. So I guess what I'm getting at is there are a lot of ways it's just kind of like, any job you could have. And like in any job, you kind of get just sort of on an autopilot kind of mode. You just do your thing, and hopefully you are or get good at it, like any job. But I forget that this is an extremely powerful megaphone. And I forget that I don't forget that when it comes to things like conspiracy theories or misinformation. I try to make sure that they are not promoted in any way on this show, unless it's to say, here's another funny one. But I forget that this is something that a lot of people turn to. For some people, it's maybe just something that's in the background throughout their day or throughout a drive. For others, maybe there is a certain time here on KVNU or any of the stations here at the Radio Ranch that, you're sure to tune in for something you enjoy. I know I talked with someone just a little while ago that never misses one of AJ and McCall's shows in the morning. Finds them just absolutely hilarious. And funny enough, AJ and, yeah.
I've heard of them, yes.
Those troublemakers across the hall. We never see them. They're usually gone by the time we get here, but...
they clear out.
This was funny. This was actually a near 70-year-old woman who told me that she never misses an AJ and McCall morning show because she thinks that they are hilarious.
So you see, the consultants are not always right.
That's right. But it's so it's easy. Like any job, you forget when you're working. For example, a manufacturing job. Every day on the job, you're not aware of or even thinking of the people who are buying that product and putting it in their homes and how it might interact and impact their lives. And so the same thing happens here. It's not something that, at least for me, that I'm conscious of every single day. But once in a while, there's a reminder. Once in a while, a lot of times it's a news story. I remember this was years and years ago. But there was some surprise. I mean, all flooding, I guess, is kind of a surprise. But this was really a surprise. No one expected it. And I don't even remember the cause at this point. But there was some pretty intense flooding in Providence. Right down the main drag, I think, on Main Street even. It was affecting homes. They were begging for volunteers to get out and sandbag as fast as possible. All of this started happening as the sun went down, so it was dark. It was just a crazy day, and I remember we dropped everything here on For the People, and then Full Court Press at the time was not, the Fan didn't exist yet, 106.9, but they would follow us. They'd come in every night at 6. As I wrapped up, they would be sitting down in the seats, and we'd say hi, talk about sports a little bit, and then they'd take over and do their thing. But that night, they didn't. That night, they shut the sports talk down and dedicated KVNU's airwaves to providing updates on this what was happening in Providence, because there was a lot of last minute dashed coordinating happening. And so we had Providence city officials and even I think the sheriff's department feeding us details and saying, we're asking people to go here now, and we need people here helping load sandbags and et cetera. And we just shut everything down. I think I don't remember, Bill, but I think it went the entire Full Court Press. They did that. And we've done that before. And you probably remember times that I don't. You've been here a lot longer than me even. But it's something that, an event happens and we drop everything planned.
Yeah.
I've even had
if it's big enough, yeah.
Sure.
You have to.
I've even had to tell guests before, yes, I know, I'm sorry, we told you to come in and we'd be here for the hour, but this first 10 minutes is going to this, or this first 20 minutes going to this breaking news. So there's that, but this is something completely different. So she sent this along. It is, for those not familiar with it, there's a radio digest, a news magazine basically, called Inside Radio. The most trusted news in the most trusted business is their sub tag. But this is through Nielsen, the big ratings firm, this article, and some surveying they did about the pandemic. And so they started this research. They started this survey back in March of 2020 when tens of millions of people are basically camping out at home. Within a week, tens of millions of people were told by their employers, you're working from home, had their kids, or if they were students themselves, they were told, you're now remote learning, quote unquote. And that was very rushed. March of 2020 here in Utah, at least. And not something anybody had planned for, not something anyone expected. And yet there we found ourselves. Well, Nielsen did some research on how people decided to interact with their news and stay connected with their community at a time when they were spending less time in their community than ever before. And it's a little snapshot, and for me, a welcome reminder into, well, I'll put it this way, radio as comfort food. We'll talk about it on the other side of these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:35, and the news is brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. The 52-year-old owner of a Smithfield catering service and a 52-year-old Logan man have both been arrested and charged with threatening a Wellsville man last week. John L. Simpson and Darwin Bundy were both booked into the Cache County Jail Friday morning. According to the arrest report, Cache County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to a citizen dispute in Wellsville early Friday morning. Upon arrival, they allegedly observed Simpson wielding a baseball bat and arguing with the alleged victim outside a small shed. He dropped the bat when law enforcement ordered him to do so. During questioning, the alleged victim claimed Simpson and Bundy came to his home after learning that he was in a relationship with Bundy's girlfriend. Bundy had allegedly asked for Simpson's help due to his martial arts training. The arrest report detailed Simpson allegedly arrived and pushed in the victim's door with a bat and a machete in his hands. Bundy was filming the incident on his cell phone, telling the alleged victim that Simpson was going to hit him with the bat. On the video, Simpson reportedly could be seen arguing and placing the machete to the victim's throat. He also placed the end of the bat under his chin and pushed upward. Bundy and Simpson were arraigned in First District Court this afternoon, appearing by web conference from jail. Both were charged with one count of aggravated assault, a third-degree felony. Simpson spoke briefly, telling the court he didn't even know the alleged victim. Bundy claimed he had recently started working for Simpson's company, Culinary Concepts. Judge Angela Fonsbeck allowed both men to be released on pretrial supervision under the condition that they have no contact with the alleged victim. She also ordered them to appear again in court later this month. Both could face up to 1 year in prison if convicted. Ski resorts are expecting a more normal season on the slopes this winter, with many virus restrictions lifted. But skiers and boarders are advised to keep a mask in their pocket in case they are required to wear one inside lodges and restaurants. Any virus-related protocols at resorts will vary depending on where they are and the local health rules in place. What is not wavering is the anticipation for a season like years past, pre-pandemic. The National Ski Areas Association does not expect to see limited capacity on chairlifts, restrictions on who people can ride with, and far fewer mask requirements outdoors. And Idaho lawmakers are seeking technology companies to appraise federal land in real time to find out how much money lawmakers say the federal government should be paying the state in property taxes if the land were privately owned. The Committee on Federalism last month put out what is called a request for information, asking companies to submit ideas by November 8th. Idaho is roughly 63% federal public land, but that land is not taxable by local governments. A federal program earlier this year sent states $530 million to make up for that lack of tax revenue. Idaho received $34.5 million, but some state lawmakers say Idaho should get more. KVNU News Time is 4:39.
Have you pulled your winter quilts and blankets out of storage? Do they smell stale and look flat? And is your hunting gear, sleeping bags, and coats dingy as well? Well, go to Mount Logan Laundry. It'll take no time at all to freshen everything up with their 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers, the biggest around, and it costs a whole lot less than dry cleaning, with free Wi-Fi and drop-off service. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town. They're on the corner of 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham City at 1st East and 7th South.
KVNU weather tonight, cloudy, slight chance of rain this evening, then rain after midnight, low around 40, chance of rain 90%. Rain likely Tuesday morning, chance of rain in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, lower 50s for the high. Partly sunny, then clearing on Wednesday, high temperature in the mid-50s. It was 59 earlier today. It's 49 with some intermittent showers here at the Radio Ranch and also throughout the valley. KVNU weather brought to you by Whole Tree Care. Hurry and get your trees trimmed before it snows. If you're still cleaning up from the October snowstorm, let Whole Tree Care help. Do you like working with your hands? Guess what? Whole Tree Care is hiring. Give them a call, 435-760-6587. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
This is Senior Branch Office Administrator Dina Milligan bringing you the Daily Financial Market Report on behalf of Financial Advisor Darrell Arnell and Edward Jones. U.S. equity markets closed higher today, driven by the energy and consumer discretionary sectors. The 10-year Treasury yield fell to 1.56%. as markets await a decision and commentary from not only the Federal Reserve this week, but also the Australian Central Bank and Bank of England. The U.S. dollar softened and crude oil prices rose to $84 levels, even as reports point to potential increases in supply coming from OPEC. U.S. equities closed higher today. The Dow Jones closed up 94 points at 35,914. The NASDAQ closed up 98 points at 15,596, and the S&P 500 closed up 8 points at 4,614. In stocks of local interest, Home Depot closed down $5.26 to $366.48. Lowe's closed down $2.07 to $231.75. Nucor down $2.43 to $109.22. Pepsi down 34 cents to $161.26. R.R. Donnelley closed up 11 cents to $6.51. Thermo Fisher closed up $2.03 to $635.10. Walmart up 37 cents to $149.79. Zions Bank up $1.20 to $64.19. And Northrop Grumman closed down $2.37 to $354.85. This has been today's Financial Market Report, brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Darrell Arnell, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
For some, this is the most wonderful time of the year. Yippee! For me, it's the worst time of the year because it's time to hang my Christmas lights. Come on! Last year, I fell off my ladder into the rose bush. The year before, my lights didn't work at all. Not this year. I'm using Logan Extermination. They can install my own Christmas lights, or they can install their LED or incandescent lights. Enjoy the holidays and preserve your sanity by calling Logan Extermination. 752-8450.
Coming up on the Tuesday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, huge showdown in the Virginia governor's race. Terry McAuliffe versus Glenn Youngkin. Decision day is today, plus other elections across the country will bring you up to speed. Plus, Clay, what do you got?
Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida fighting battles every single day against the Biden administration. What is the absolute latest from the Sunshine State? We'll find out from Ron DeSantis. You need to be hanging with us. It's the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, Tuesday. Don't miss it.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU. 102 FM and 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. We'll be talking more about Facebook later on in the show. If you haven't had a chance to listen, man, check out the Facebook Files from the Wall Street Journal. This is a written series and also has a companion podcast. But, man, does it not paint a pretty picture of what's been going on inside Facebook the last few years and why you should keep a close eye on them if you're a user. We'll talk about that later on in the show, but speaking of social media, this, again, as I said up before the news, was sent in by a listener, and as I said before the news, it's easy for me, at least, I can't speak for anyone else here, but it's easy to forget, despite the fact there's a microphone in front of my face for 2 hours a day here. You do, after coming up on 14 years, you do, like any job, you just get used to it. So the microphone doesn't seem weird. Some days, often you even forget that, how many thousands of people might be listening. I always try to be careful about, and cognizant of the impact of certain things. That's, as I said before the news, try to make sure that there's never any promotion or uncritical look at conspiracy theories or misinformation. Seems to be a lot of that going around lately. But otherwise, it's like any job, you just kind of get into a routine autopilot. And so it's nice to have a reminder once in a while of what it is that we're actually doing here. Not just me, but the entire KVNU crew and all the other stations as well. But a former guest sent this in, and she sent it in. She said, had a great time on your show. Hope to come back again. Thank you for giving us the time and having some great questions for us. Wanted to send this along because I was thinking after I left the studio that day that I grew up listening to KVNU, and suddenly it was a bit weird to be there in the studio and on the airwaves. And I wanted to send this along that I remembered reading about before, and now it appears the results are out. What she's talking about is, and I'd forgotten about this too, I think Eric Franson had sent this to me way back in March or April of 2020 when the pandemic, officially started here in Utah. Suddenly most people at least, have been told, you're working from home now. And by the way, the kids are going to be home too because they're learning from home. And this all happened within a week and for most of us. And very sudden, very unexpected. No one plans for this type of thing. Even after having had it happen to us, I can say, at least for myself, I'm not sitting there planning on, okay, what if next week there's some other thing that forces me to, suddenly be spending a lot of time at home. It's just one of those things that you don't think is going to come up, and then boom, there it is. And so it was rough for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, they felt very isolated and cut off. I was lucky enough to have some close family that I was able to interact with in safe ways on a regular basis. I also had my clients in the day job that I was on the phone with somebody or on Zoom with somebody almost at all times. I was also lucky enough not to be financially impacted by any of this, but for a lot of people that was not the case, so there's some added stress and anxiety there. And then you're being told, that the responsible thing to protect yourself and to protect others is to go out as little as possible. And this could go on for a few months. So here we are in this situation. What do people do? Well, my instinct would have told me everyone turned on cable news. Everybody just, decided, okay, that's going to be my connection to the world. I'm just going to watch a lot of cable news to stay informed and to stay up. But then for local news, what were people doing?
Tuning into Angela Dunn every day.
Yeah, that's right. Those live stream daily briefings. That actually, I think a lot of people did do that. Dr. Angela Dunn became a bit of a celebrity here in Utah because she was the face of that task force for a year and a half. And everybody heard from her once a day, which is probably more than a lot of people were talking to some even immediate family members. So, a lot of questions on how this impacted us. And it's going to take years to really figure that out. But Nielsen is out this week, and this is what this listener/guest sent in, prefacing it again with her saying, I grew up listening to KVNU. Al and Craig were staples of, not to make, if Alan Craig are listening right now, not to make them feel old, but
Craig, you're a staple.
She said these were staples of my my mornings a lot of times in my commute, and I remember my parents listening, and I can kind of say the same thing myself. I've told this story before, but I remember, I think the morning Paul Harvey was the rerun. Am I remembering that correctly? Was it a rerun of the, or was the morning one the new one?
No, he did a new one in the morning, 6:30 every morning.
So I remember the school bus ride in high school. Every morning I heard Alan Craig and Paul Harvey, and the timing of the school bus ride, Paul Harvey would end just as we were getting there.
He did I think we would run Paul Harvey at 6:30, and if memory serves me right, which it usually doesn't, Paul Harvey's rest of the story at 7:30, and then we'd play Paul Harvey's morning news again at 8:30.
Okay.
I think that's what we did.
I don't even remember what time I was going to school those days, but I know Paul Harvey would wrap up just as the bus was pulling into the parking lot. And so,
he'd say good day, and you'd get off the bus.
There were, a lot of people that I hauled hay to KBLQ so many times. I remember that. Just that classic, that twangy classic country, and playing through the open windows of every truck out there in the field, and we were all hauling hay. So it's just, I take a lot of us take that for granted too. Back to the pandemic and this Nielsen survey here, though, in light of this whole discussion, this is what this former guest and apparently lifelong KVNU listener sent in, hoping that we would take a moment to read it and feel good about it, I guess. So Nielsen started, I remember reading that they were starting this in I think April of 2020 when Eric Franzen sent it to me. They were starting what they were calling a perpetual study. So unlike a political poll that is done, it's out in the field for 2 weeks or something like that, Nielsen decided what they were going to do was they were just going to keep asking this question over and over indefinitely throughout the pandemic. And they're still asking it today, by the way. And if you're familiar with Nielsen, Nielsen has a pre-weighted, meaning they try to weight the results for people who are power watchers or listeners, and average Joes and Janes who are listening for an hour or two a day, but sometimes broken up in 10-minute segments throughout their day. And so they did some surveying because Nielsen also wanted to know, as this pandemic started, did people turn to cable news? Where were they getting their local news? Was there an increase here, a decrease there? And so what they found basically in their perpetual study, which is still ongoing, by the way, where they just ask these questions over and over. They found that more than half of respondents, 53%, felt more inclined to listen to local radio and local radio personalities. They wanted to hear not just news, but they wanted to hear voices they were familiar with. This is the assumption Nielsen makes from the results. So that was 53% on average before the pandemic. As the pandemic started, respondents' answers changed, and that ended up by the fall of 2020 had ticked up to 72%. 72% of people had decided to flip their radios on and to do so to listen to voices that were familiar to them. Like, I'm not going to say myself because I'm too humble, but like Alan Craig in the morning. They wanted to hear the news. They preferred to hear it from someone who lived in the area, and that was important to them. They actually listed that when asked why. When they asked why, why did you turn your radio on for a longer period of time or turn it on when you maybe normally wouldn't have it all? The two things people said as the pandemic started in the spring of 2020, people said they turned on their radio at the start of the pandemic because they could get national news and local news, and they could get it from a voice they recognized, someone who they knew lived in their community, And that was appealing to them.
It was comforting.
Sure. And that's what, so Nielsen, in their executive summary of this first batch of results from this perpetual study, they said that was their conclusion, is that people felt, even if it wasn't really the case, they felt isolated and more cut off. They felt like something really big had just changed. And even when they went out to the grocery store, things were different and things were weird. And so they found themselves drawn back to not national personalities like people we all know from CNN or Fox or MSNBC or any of that, even famous near celebrities from your favorite podcast. What people wanted when they felt isolated and afraid, but they still wanted news, they still wanted to be informed, they wanted to know what was going on. They found themselves, going more local, to the tune of a near 60% increase in local sources of information, local media, a near 60% increase for people who had previously said it was one of the lowest media consumption choices on their list. 60% increase for them. For those who spent a significant amount of time already plugged in with local media, they found themselves making it more a part of their schedule. Less of an accident and more of a, I'm stopping what I'm doing to turn this on right now. And where did they turn? Well, predominantly 92% turned to radio, local radio. Listener sent this in and said, this is a personal story for me. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm paraphrasing the email here. She said basically, when all this happened, I found myself tuning in the mornings to Alan Craig, and I found myself tuning in the afternoons to you more often because you were all talking about this. You were all providing me with news and information. You were keeping me updated. Oftentimes on your show, I could hear a recap of what Dr. Angela Dunn had to say during the task force briefing earlier in the day, and you would start the show with that, so I knew I could tune in then and hear it. And she said it was comfort food. Like Nielsen says in their executive summary, people tended to turn to local radio stations as not only an information source during the earliest months of the pandemic, but also as comfort, something that made them feel in their own responses connected to their communities and getting their news from individuals who were a part of their communities rather than someone who may not have a clue what's going on where they live, like a cable news personality. It was just a really cool thing. And so I appreciate her sending this in because it's a good reminder that, at times of maybe stress or, as I mentioned, when there's breaking news, some sort of big event happening here, there really isn't any other media source that can just drop what they're doing and cover that. There isn't any other outlet that, for example, with Dr. Angela Dunn's briefings for a year plus here on the show, in which we have the time to actually run, 10 minutes of highlights from those briefings each day for those who couldn't watch the live stream as it happened at noon each day. And it's a really unique thing to see. Now, obviously, hopefully, there's never another pandemic, though I guess that's unlikely. There will never be another one. Let's hope it's at least 100 years off, like the last one before this was. But at the same time, it's a nice reminder from this listener that what we do here is not just fun for Bill and I each day, which it is, but also important. And appreciate everyone for tuning in, to say the least. On the other side, we'll wrap this hour up and then start hour 2 with, finally, we'll be able to take a look at what's happening on Utah's Capitol Hill today. This now coming up on 3.5 hour legislative redistricting meeting. It's been a barn burner. We'll talk about it right after this.
Welcome to Everyone's Metal Store, home to tons of metal products for the DIYer or experienced pros, with a sales staff ready to assist with any type of metal question. Palmer's Metal Mart in Logan is your metal store, no matter the size of your project. With one of the state's best selections of metal products under one roof, you will love the price and selection at Metal Mart. For almost 30 years, for projects big or small, customers have found their home for metal products and extraordinary service to be at Metal Mart. No matter your knowledge of metal products, Metal Mart is here to serve. Give us a call or come into our store in Logan and see why we're everyone's metal store. If you need metal roofing, tubing or pipe, sheet metal, angle iron, purlins or rebar, call Palmer's Metal Mart today. When it comes to metal, just remember Palmer's Metal Mart, everyone's metal store. It's that simple. Visit us online at palmersmetalmart.com or in Logan, just east of the airport. Steel, service, and savings. See you soon.
News at the top and bottom of the hour. News Talk KVNU, Logan, 610 AM at 102.1 FM. Proud to be locally owned and operated by the Cache Valley Media Group.